Hi, I'm Sophie Summers, and as always, welcome to the Crossdressing Lifestyle channel. Now in today's video we're going to be talking about various forms of shapewear and ways in which you can achieve a much more enhanced figure without absolutely crucifying yourself. So the objective today is to have a look at various forms of shapewear from, for instance, this very retro what Katie did inspired corselette, as you can see here. Also another one of corselettes, which is again kind of a retro. You can obtain these ones from Rego or Bedita. So those are two types of corselettes we're going to have a look at, followed by the more traditional way in which to really pull in that waist of yours, which is the kind of, I would say, the underbust or waspy type steel-boned corset. And of course, as we're talking about corsets here, a traditional overbust type of corset as well. So we're going to see what sort of figure we can get with those. And as a little bit of a compromise, and I always like to wear these ones, I always turn to my favourite what Katie did, what I call them waspies here, these elasticated ones. As you can see, it's quite an effective one. Go for it now. I've also got an alternative one here to have a look at. So what I want to do is to go into the individual merits of each and every one of those designs and show you obviously what they look like on. So let's take a little look, starting off with one of my favourites, which is this one here from the What Katie Did range. Now I quite like corselettes. Now they are considered by many to be a little bit old-fashioned, but I think they've got a light to medium ability to be able to shape you around the important area, which is the waist and the hips. Now what I like about this particular one, and there's a little bit of thought gone into it, is the clasp at the top of the bust line on this particular design. Because what I generally find is that they are generally quite flat along the bust line and not very, how would I say, flattering if you've got a cleavage. But this particular design is very good. Now what I like also is the semi sort of padded out cups you have with this particular design. All in all, it is a very comprehensive piece of lingerie because you've got my favourite suspender clasps on the bottom here, so you can fit it with your favourite pair of stockings should you wish. Obviously they are removable. So that is a little bit of a look at the first one, which is a corselette. And as I say, a lot of people don't like corselettes, but I actually think they have a very good place in the lingerie section and do a very good job. Even the traditional old-fashioned sort of 1950s version I've got here. Now what I do like about this one, again, it has its clasp on the bottom. There's only 4 on this one, but it's got a sealing sort of membrane all the way along the hem here, so it actually fits quite nicely against your top parts of your thighs. It's very figure hugging. Now both of these have a form of power mesh in them, so around the waist area you can really get the benefit of this very strong and durable elasticated waistline here. Now when I buy these particular garments, I always try and get one size smaller so I know I'm going to get that nice tight constrained sort of feel to it. So that's the longer version, and I think you should give a little bit of consideration to those. They are very retro, but they are extremely effective. Now whilst we're talking about being effective, I think a lot of people know that you can get quite a major waist reduction with corsets. Now I have lots of corsets and I feature them quite heavily on this channel, and if you are interested in that, there is a link popping up hopefully over my shoulder here to take you to some corset reviews. But the ones I want to look at here are just the 2 basic designs. Now this one here is a actual waist trimmer or a waist training corset, so they're more boned. As you can see here, it's got a steel clasp and steel bones in it. It's actually designed to compress in the lower part of the waist. It's also got some hip haunches design on this one here, so it sits quite nicely over the hip area. And as you can see from some of the shots I took earlier during the day out for a stroll, you can achieve quite a good hourglass figure with this one. Now, I always find that wearing corsets, it's always best to wear them on the outside, because it's very difficult to conceal the fact that you are wearing a garment of this nature underneath, particularly when you wind up the strings on the back of them to give you that reduced waist look. It's more applicable to me on the overbust corsets, like I've got this one here. Now, the overbust ones are actually a bit longer, and what you find is sometimes you can have a little bit of a challenge with the torso length. Now, I get most of my corsets from Corset Story, and they have a very generous long length on them, so I don't have a problem with them digging into my inside of my thigh when I sit down, which can be awfully uncomfortable. Plus the fact that incorrect corsets have a tendency to push your bust line up, and you suddenly develop mumps underneath your chin here where your bust should be. Now, I quite like wearing corsets. I do have a tendency to wind them up quite strong. That's because I'm quite used to wearing them. But as I said earlier, I prefer to wear them on the outside rather than underneath. So we've gone from the corselette, which is, how I say, a light shapewear piece of lingerie, to the corsets, and there is something in between that I must admit I wear far more frequently, because I can wear them under clothing, even tight-fitting dresses, and that is another thing which is called an elasticated waspy here. This one is from What Katie Did, my favourite brand, if I must say, because it's a very strong power mesh on this one, and it fits lovely on my frame. I'm a medium type of height. I stand at 5'6" and 1/2 inch, and it sits just right underneath my rib cage and beautifully down on my hips. It's soft, so when you sit down, it doesn't fold up, or it doesn't dig into either underneath your rib cage or into your joint on the thighs, which is very important if you're going to be wearing this for a considerable period of time. Now, this is another version of it. It's slightly boned. It's a very old one, actually. I don't even think the company's, who is it? It's Lady Marlene. This is so old, I don't even think the company exists anymore. But it's actually still boned along here, which is a bit unusual for this one. But again, it targets that midriff area here. And I cannot emphasize enough, as a piece of shapewear, it is a bit like a sniper's target rifle. It just hits the right area, that little bit underneath the rib cage and down to your hip, so it does pull that in quite nicely. Now, I find that trying to sort of balance my hips with my waist gives me a much more feminine figure, but I don't like to be uncomfortable in reducing my waist. So my go-to is a combination of a silicone waist or silicone hips with something like the What Katie Did waspy, or the Lady Marlene one here. But if I want a really dramatic hourglass figure, and that's to make my hips stand out much more, I do have a tendency to go for the more still boned corsets or waspets here, or waist trainers, because those are capable of really reducing your waist down. Now, when it comes to these particular garments, I always buy them about 6 inches less than my natural waist size. Now, I'm a 32-inch male waist, so I buy I'd buy a 26, my maths has gone a bit then, a 26-inch corset. Now, that doesn't mean I'm reducing my waist by 6 inches, it just seems to be about the right reduction for me and leaves quite a pleasant gap at the back. So that was quite a big run through there, but I was going to say that to clarify the shapewear, it comes to 3 sort of categories. There's the lightweight ones, which are these lovely corselettes here, and I think for the retro look they are fantastic. Particularly, I do love this one from What Katie Did. It just pulls me in just nicely and gives me that sassy sort of feeling whenever I'm wearing it, knowing it's underneath my retro clothing. It's quite a enhancement. And then there is the medium sort of coverage here, which is the waspies, and finally your full training type waist hipster corsets, depending on what you're trying to achieve. what I can say is you can get quite a nice effect with them. Try them all, have a good look around. There's lots of very good brands out there. And that is a very quick run through. I have left some of the descriptions down below in the area below with some links to some of the products should you wish to find out a little bit more. But as always, if you haven't considered subscribing to the channel, please do so. Also hit the notification bell because that will give you an advance warning of when our next videos are going up. So as always, please stay gorgeous, stay safe, and until the next time, bye bye.